Welcome to Slacker Sports Show.
Good evening, sports fans, and welcome back to another podcast episode of Slacker Sports Show, where we discuss anything and everything you need to know about sports. Let's welcome to the co-host of the podcast, Mark. How are you doing today, Mark?
Doing well. We're kind of in a weird middle ground, transferring from having a bunch of professional sports to college football starting to take the main stage, and Major League Soccer starting to kind of get close to their playoffs. So it's kind of a transitional time in sports, but we're going to try to hit on as much as we can this week.
Yeah, so we're going to start off with the NFL and then hit up the NCAA and then talk a little bit about Major League Soccer, which is the U.S. version of soccer. So let's get started in the NFL, where not a lot of crazy things went on this week. We got some decent matches coming up here this weekend. Last weekend, not a lot of crazy things going on. The Steelers were able to stay undefeated this last week, and this week, don't think anything is going to change. They end up playing the Dallas Cowboys, so probably a win there. And then they play the Bengals, the Jaguars, and then the Ravens again. Then they go. Then they're home against Washington, at Bills, at Bengals, Colts, and then at Browns. Do you think, Mark, that they're going to go undefeated this year? Or, I mean, I think we both thought that the Ravens game was going to be kind of the game where we figure out if Pittsburgh is really as good as they, seem to be playing, and they were able to take care of the Ravens in Baltimore. So do you think they have a chance of going undefeated?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the Ravens win did kind of get respect for them from me. That was impressive, but I don't. It's hard to go the undefeated in the NFL in this day and age, and especially as you get closer to the playoffs, where teams start to maybe kind of back off a little bit and save their key players up for the playoff run. I could see them maybe going 14-2 or something like that, but if you kind of look back, a lot of times a team with the best record doesn't necessarily always win the Super Bowl or make a deep playoff run, because they just use so much of their energy trying to have this great regular season, and then it seems like they're not ready to adapt in the playoffs, or they're just kind of exhausted from the regular season. So I'm not sure how the Steelers are going to approach that exactly, if they're going to go for an undefeated regular season or start resting guys here once they lock up a playoff berth, but definitely got a good win last week and are pretty firmly in control of that division so far.
And so we're going to talk about some of the games this week to watch, to look forward to. If you didn't catch it last, I think Saturday or Sunday, we released a podcast talking about the NFL in general, so we won't spend a lot of time on it today, because we did a whole podcast on the NFL, the rankings, how we thought every team was playing, and all that good stuff. So if you didn't listen to that last week, go ahead and go back and listen to it. But these are the games this week that I'm kind of excited about. We got Seattle at Buffalo. I think it's going to be a couple of good teams fighting it out. And then we got Chicago at Tennessee. Interesting to see if Chicago can continue to just kind of pull off weird wins against a good team in Tennessee. Then we got Miami at Arizona. Miami, the Tua has started his career undefeated. Basically, they won last week. And so it'll be interesting to see if they can give Arizona a fight. Arizona playing very, very well this year. So I think it's going to be either a blowout in Arizona's way, or Miami's going to put up some sort of fight there. Then we got New Orleans at Tampa Bay. And I wouldn't really actually put this as a game, but Tampa Bay looked really, really bad on Monday night against the Giants, where they were able to squeak one out by 2. And they just didn't look good, and so I don't know if they just played down to the level. But New Orleans, I mean, they're better than their record suggests. So I think this game might actually be a pretty good game between Drew Brees and Tom Brady.
Yeah, kind of just, I guess, my thoughts on all those games. Seattle at Buffalo. I mean, if you've been listening at all this podcast, I'm on the Buffalo train, but it hasn't been too inspiring as of late. They dropped a couple games there, and then last week they had a tough time with kind of a mediocre to bad Patriots team. They only ended up winning by 3, I believe. Yeah, it was 24-21. So I think Seattle's definitely the better team there, even though they'll be playing in Buffalo, which is never an easy game for anybody. I think Seattle could come out there, Chicago and Tennessee, like you said, is an interesting matchup. Tennessee lost last week by quite a bit to the Bengals, and we talked a little bit last week about how the Bengals are frisky and could take a game here or there, but I think the Titans have the better roster overall, so that was surprising. And Chicago, I think, barely lost against the Saints by 3 in overtime, so that was a tough, hard-fought game. And I guess the Bears are maybe starting to, the way I'm viewing them is starting to change a little bit. I thought they were kind of getting lucky at the beginning of the season. That was the way I viewed it. And now that they're staying in a lot of these close games with good teams like the Buccaneers and the Saints, they're definitely starting to rise up the ranks in my eyes. I still wouldn't put them as one of the top 5 teams in the league or anything, but definitely starting to rise up the ranks. So offense still doesn't do much, but they're just hanging in there with their defense. So that could be, I could see that going Chicago's way. Miami and Arizona, I think Arizona's, like you said, been playing really well this season. DeAndre Hopkins is doing well. Kyler Murray's doing well. Their whole offense seems to be clicking. And I've only really had trouble, I think, against kind of the good teams in their own division. So I see that going Arizona's way. And then I'm hoping that the Saints and Bucs game is close. I hope the Saints can kind of live up to their potential of what everybody thought at the beginning of the season. They've kind of been average, I guess I would say. They haven't been bad. They just maybe not lived up to what I thought they were going to do. So if they can be what everybody thinks they should have been to start the season, I think that'd be a good game. And Tampa Bay's kind of got the revenge factor going because the Saints beat them in week 1 or 2, I think. So definitely a lot of good matchups this weekend, and be interesting to see how division standings and everything changes after this weekend.
So the Saints beat the Buccaneers 34-23 in week 1. They lost against the Raiders week 2, lost against the Packers week 3, and then New Orleans was able to beat the Lions 35-29, the Chargers 30-27, the Panthers 27-24, and then last week the Bears 26-23. So they're winning games, but as you kind of said, they're not really playing outstanding. I mean, they're winning games, but they're all really close games, which is a good thing that your team can win these close games, but they shouldn't all be close games. So it will be interesting to see because the Bucs have changed a lot since week 1, and they've even added more people like Antonio Brown and everything, which we won't really get into that. But the Buccaneers are going to be a different team, so I think the Saints have a chance to win this one. It'd be interesting if they can win this one. Then I'll feel a lot better about the Saints' chances, because after this week they got the 49ers, the Falcons, the Broncos, the Falcons, the Eagles. Which, by the way, the Falcons and the Eagles, 2 of the worst teams in the league right now. If you watched the Eagles and Dallas game, you would have cried. And then they got the Chiefs, the Vikings, and Panthers. So I think the Saints are pretty smooth sailing if they can get through this Bucs game and get the win there. And so obviously every week we talk about our fantasy teams going in. Mark, I'll let you talk about your fantasy team first this week.
It's been a rough couple weeks for your boy. Went from 5-1 to 5-3 pretty quick. Just between injuries and guys not living up to their potential in fantasy, it's kind of been rough for the past couple weeks. Just looking at last week, I lost by 20 points, and I mean the other team had a couple guys go off. He had Patrick Mahomes, who had 44 points, and DK Metcalf, who had 40 points, so that definitely helps and was enough to swing the matchup in his favor. Without those 2 guys, I think I would have ended up beating him, but that was kind of the nail in the coffin for me. Aaron Rodgers basically got what he was expected to get for me at quarterback. Tyreek Hill went above average, which was good. I mean, I think if you had anybody on the Chiefs last week, basically anybody, I'd need to check all their receivers and everything, but good week for the Chiefs last week, so Tyreek Hill got me some points. Calvin Ridley has been hurt and really didn't do much last week for me. Adam Thielen, that was a bad game from him, and I don't even think... Let's see, I have Justin Jefferson too, and he really didn't have any points either. So the Vikings really didn't do too much in fantasy last week. Running backs, I didn't have much. I had Jonathan Taylor from Indianapolis. He has kind of been disappointing for me this year. Only had 5 points. George Kittle, I'm going to have to make a move there, and I think I put him on the IR, in our IR spot, and I picked up, let me see, picked up Noah Fant from the Broncos, so that might be able to kind of plug somebody in because George Kittle will be out there for, I think they said 6 to 8 weeks, so that could be a season-ending injury there, but kind of holding on to him just in case anything happens late in the year. And that was about it for me. Buffalo's defense had them, and I think I got rid of them after this last week. They only gave me 4 points, so nothing too special out of anybody last week on my team. This week, I think I'm favored to win as of now. Still got Aaron Rodgers on the starting spot at quarterback. Tyreek Hill, I think he'll have another good game against Carolina, so looking forward to that. Might play around with some of the receivers and running backs. Aaron Jones, he's been questionable most of the year, so he's been on and off my starting lineup. I picked up David Johnson as another running back, so I think that might help. They're going against Jacksonville, have him in the starting lineup, so kind of have to make some moves at this point if I want to get back on track. And if you're somebody who's in fantasy for the first time, that's definitely something you need to keep track of just as you go up throughout the season. Even if you get off to a hot start, there can be times where you need to cut players or get rid of them, even if they may bounce back, just to kind of stay in the standings if they're kind of going on a downhill slope. So may have to make some more moves, but I think I've tweaked my roster enough to maybe have a chance this week and get back in the win column. What'd you do in fantasy this week?
Well, since you're struggling at tight end, I have a few tight ends I can send your way. We'll have to discuss some trades later on. This week, I got the win, won by about like 52 points, playing the last team in the league, so kind of expected to win. But the biggest thing about this week, I felt like, was if you look at my draft and you look at the players that I have injured or on my bench because of injury right now, you would be shocked because I have Michael Thomas on the bench because he's been injured. I have Chris Godwin on the bench because he was injured. Chris Carson on the bench, he's injured. And Nick Chubb on the bench because he's injured. So I have 4 of probably my top 6 picks aren't even playing right now because they're all injured. So the fact that I was able to put a good week together through all the injuries and stuff, I'm happy about it. Basically, the biggest thing was having Dalvin Cook. He scored. He had 38 rush attempts, 163 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then he also had 2 receptions for 63 yards and another touchdown. So scored me 48 points, which that'll go a long, long way. And then I had Russell Wilson score me 35, and then Kupp scored me 22. And then besides that, I mean, it was kind of just the points here and there. Greg Zuerlein had me 16 points as a kicker. Indianapolis defense got me 15.9. So getting just good points throughout, but yeah, kind of like you said. I mean, injuries happen, and you have to kind of adjust. And I'm at a point now where my top 4 of my 6 players are down on injury or not playing. So it's really tough to try to make those calls and try to get people subbed in. Not to mention, I've had a wide receiver going off for me and Terry McLaurin, and he was out last week with a bye. So I pretty much was just stuck with the lineup I had and ended up working out, especially with Dalvin Cook scoring all those points. This week, right now, I am projected to win, but I don't know if they've set their lineup from buys yet because their points are showing kind of lower than normal. So I'm guessing they have a few guys on bye weeks that they'll need to substitute out. But hopefully, I'm hoping that Michael Thomas can go this week. Chris Godwin can go this week. Have another good week from Cook. But yeah, I'll have to send you a trade your way because I got 2 tight ends with Evan Ingram and Mark Andrews, both of which have scored a lot of double-figure games for me. So and for me, it's almost even tougher because it's trying to figure out which one's going to have the better day. And sometimes I would rather just have one, one good one, and just know that I could set it and forget it and not have to worry about something else. It's kind of like why something to note, when you're in fantasy, I have Russell Wilson. He's already had week 6 bye, so I got rid of my backup quarterback because he's using an extra slot, and I'm never gonna put somebody else in over Russell Wilson. Now, if Russell Wilson gets hurt, I'll have to go out and find someone, but I'm not going to use up that slot on my bench when, I might use that spot for somebody else. So just another thing to keep in mind when you're looking at fantasy football stuff. All right. So next we'll head to the NCAA, and we've not done a lot about the NCAA, and a lot of that's because we follow along enough to know what's going on, but not enough to know the ins and outs of NCAA football. And I've been keeping up with it for the fact that there's just a couple teams I've really been paying attention to, and some of them have been better than others. And so I think what we're going to talk about is kind of who is surprising us at this point, and then go on from there. So my first surprise ranking has to be Cincinnati Bearcats at number 6. Right now they're 3-0. They've won the games they've supposed to win, and the ranks are a little weird because you have teams like Oregon that would be a top 5 team, but the Pac-12 hasn't started playing yet, so they've been dropping down the rankings. And so Pac-12, the Big Ten, a lot of those teams should be in the top, like top 5, top 10, but because they haven't played games yet, they haven't really solidified that spot. So you have teams like Cincinnati up here at number 6 at 3-0, which is pretty crazy to see. The other team is the Indiana Hoosiers. I say that because I live in Indiana now, and if you know anything about the Indiana football team, they're usually really, really bad. I would almost say in the same caliber of a KU Jayhawks football team. They're usually really, really bad. Don't win much. Right now they're only 2-0, so it's nothing crazy. But right now they're at number 13, which has got to be really, really high for them, considering the last few years of their football. And then the last is Coastal Carolina. They're 4-0. And the thing that impresses me most, I believe they're ranked like 23rd or something. The most impressive thing to me is I've actually watched 2 Coastal Carolina games, and their quarterback is pretty much unstoppable. Right now they're outscoring opponents 161-64, and just the way they've played, this team is actually a legit good team, and it kind of reminds me of like when we get into NCAA basketball and stuff about these, like when March Madness happens and all these teams come out of nowhere from smaller conferences and they beat people they shouldn't, and that's what that Coastal Carolina team kind of does for me. They kind of like, they just beat everyone, and it's like, why? They're not, they're not supposed to be good. Kind of like how Boise State was like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. You know how Boise State was just beating everyone, and it's like, why? They're not in a big conference. They're not really, but then when they get into bowl games and stuff, they're winning them. So this team's interesting to watch. If you have a chance to watch them, go ahead and watch them. They're pretty exciting to watch.
Yeah, kind of just echoing what Trevor said. I haven't been paying attention to college football as much as I like, mostly just paying attention to my team, K-State. But just looking at the rankings, I would say you can probably count the top 10 to 12 teams as legitimate, ranked legitimately where they should be. And the rest has kind of been a crapshoot so far, just looking at who's in there and the schedules of some of those people in there. It seems like basically if you've been playing a good number of games that have at least one somewhat signature win, you're kind of ranked at this point, just because nobody's got a consistent schedule, which kind of makes sense. You kind of have to rank who's been playing. That's why, like you said, Oregon has been dropping a little bit. I think they're 12 and 14 in the AP and coaches poll, respectively. And USC is still in the top 25, though they haven't played either, even though the Pac-12 is starting up this week. But kind of just had to rank who's played and who's got signature wins. So that's why you see the Coastal Carolinas, the Marshalls, Army, I think, is in the coaches poll. They're ranked. Liberty is in the AP poll. They're ranked number 25. So I think you'll see a very different coaches poll by the end of the college football season, which I still don't know if we've really heard how the playoffs are going to work and all that stuff. Like I said, I haven't been paying attention to as much as I should, but you'll see a lot of the traditional powers that are good every year at the top of the rankings. So I guess that's why I'm putting more stock in the top 10 or so. Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State. But looking up and down the rankings, it's inconsistent as far as number of games played. Wisconsin is number 10 and 11, and both these polls I'm looking at, they've only played one game. So kind of hard to go off of that, but like you said, some surprising people up there, and I think just looking at Indiana specifically, because they're a one of the only Power 5 teams we looked at as far as surprises. I think their big win over Penn State's what's taking them there, because they got a big win over the number 8 team in the nation, 36-35 in overtime the first week they played. So that's kind of keeping them in that spot right there. But we'll see how everything goes, and I think it'll be a different situation come December or early January. But we'll see how things go.
So some of the games to watch this weekend, if you're looking to watch some college football, with everything kind of winding down in other sports, we got number 9 BYU at Boise State, and that's going to be a Friday night game if your high school isn't playing on Fridays anymore. We got Michigan at Indiana, again one of those games that I guess we'll find out if Indiana is that good, going up against a bigger team in Michigan. As Mark said last week, they beat Penn State, but I mean, can you beat multiple powerhouses back-to-back weeks? We'll have to see how that goes. Number 8 Florida versus number 5 Georgia, really, really good game. I'm actually going to try to watch that this weekend. I'm actually a really huge fan of Georgia right now. I watched 2 of their games so far, and their defense is just flying everywhere. I mean, I love their defense. I love the way their defense is playing. And so I'll probably watch that game. Then we got number 14, Oklahoma State at Kansas State. And I don't, even though I'm not a huge Kansas State fan, I got to say this is a upset waiting to happen. And I don't even know if you can really call it an upset, because Kansas State has been winning games. They were ranked last week and then kind of had an and ended up losing that one. But Oklahoma State, number 14, I believe they were top 10 last week and lost. And so I think this is kind of 2 teams going against each other, kind of slugging it out. So I think that's going to be a good game. And then I think the number 1 game to watch this weekend, if number 8 and number 5 against each other wasn't good enough, how about number 1 Clemson at number 4 Notre Dame? Now, some insight into this game. Trevor Lawrence will not be playing. So that kind of, I don't know. Looking at this game coming in, Clemson has the upper hand, but then last week without Trevor Lawrence, Clemson almost lost. They were like a 31-point favorite going into the game, and Clemson almost lost last week without Trevor Lawrence, and because of protocols and everything, he is not able to play in this game against Notre Dame. So even though it's number 1 versus number 4, I think Notre Dame's going to come out and put a beating down on Clemson, which, I mean, it stinks because Clemson, I mean, I watched it because it was such a close game. Like, I saw it pop up, and so I watched a little bit of it. And, yeah, the Clemson seemed lost. They had no idea how to run an offense without Trevor Lawrence. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, they have a whole week to figure it out with their backup and try to figure out a game plan against Notre Dame. But, I mean, Notre Dame's going to come in here hungry, and, I mean, it's going to be a good game, but I think the actual upper hand goes to Notre Dame now, since Trevor Lawrence has been ruled out.
Yeah, I would agree. That's definitely one of the games to watch, like you said, because of the Trevor Lawrence COVID-19 situation. And really, I mean, if Clemson could get past this game, I think they could be fine for the rest of the season. After Notre Dame, they have Florida State, who kind of back and forth there. Pittsburgh, not very good. Virginia Tech, not great. So if they could get past Notre Dame, they could probably end the season undefeated and hold on to that number 1 ranking. Like you said, they looked kind of lost last week without their star, Trevor Lawrence. So that could be a game where you look back next season and you're like, how'd they lose to Notre Dame? Like, Notre Dame wasn't as good as we thought or something like that. And then you'll remember, oh, yeah, Trevor Lawrence was out that game. So could be interesting to watch there. Some of the other games you hit on, I think Indiana and Michigan, that'll definitely show who's kind of legitimate in that conference. If Indiana's the real deal or if they're both kind of just middle-of-the-pack teams. Florida, Georgia, that'll be really good. And then, like you said, Oklahoma State, K-State. I mean, I'm a K-State fan, so I'm biased. They've looked better than I thought they were going to look this year. I didn't know what to expect, and I think they're 4-2 right now. Lost to West Virginia, I believe, last week. But mean, they beat Oklahoma, which a lot of people thought was going to be a top team in the conference, and Big 12 just doesn't seem like there's a dominant team. Nobody that's going to be like top 4, top 5 in the nation. So I could see the top of the Big 12 kind of picking each other off every week, and maybe not have a consistently good team. Maybe it's going to make any noise in the college football playoff or anything. But I would agree with you and say Clemson Notre Dame's definitely the game to watch, just because of the huge shakeup that could happen if Notre Dame pulls off the upset.
Yeah, and kind of talk about the Big 12. Iowa State is, I guess, the top of the Big 12, but they're number 17 at 4-1. Kansas State not ranked, 4-1. Oklahoma State 3-1 in conference. Sooners 3-2 in conference, 3-2 for the Texas Longhorns. So yeah, I mean, these teams are beating up on each other. Besides Texas Tech and Kansas not really getting any wins. I guess Baylor down there as well. But yeah, these teams are just beating each other up, and it's really kind of pushing them down the ranks. And I honestly think this year, if depending on how they do the playoffs, depending if they even do a playoffs or whatever, I really do think that this year might be the year that the Big 12 doesn't have anybody go into the playoffs and have a chance at a national championship, because I just don't think there's a team here that's strong enough to beat the teams they should. I mean, Oklahoma, Texas usually coming out. Every once in a while you get like a Texas Tech, an Oklahoma State, something like that. But every single team in the division so far, besides Oklahoma State at 4-1, every team already has 2 losses this year. So it'll be interesting to see if a team can possibly go up the rankings somehow, win the rest of their Big 12 games. But I don't think the Big 12 is going to have anybody in the college championship if they end up having one. All right, let's move to the MLS Soccer, which is Major League Soccer, which is the United States version of soccer, basically. And we're just going to talk about kind of what's going on, try to give you a little bit of insight. They have been playing. They had like a comeback tournament early on. I think probably about 2 months ago, I believe, is when they had it, where they're in a bubble in Florida. And they're able to come out after the bubble and play some very meaningful games. MLS has done a great job of I wouldn't say not allowing coronavirus. Like, they just haven't had a lot of cases. They've been very, very, very good about kind of everyone following protocol and stuff like that. There's been a few players that have come down with it, but it hasn't been very widespread, which is good. So right now, just kind of give you a little overview. The playoffs are going to be starting soon. A few teams are already locked in, and they're going to allow top 8 of each division. So there's going to be 16 total teams into the tournament. Right now in the Eastern, the top 4 are Philadelphia Union with 13 wins, 4 losses, and 5 draws. Toronto FC 13-4-5 as well. And then you got Columbus Crew, which is kind of surprising because if you remember a couple years ago, Columbus Crew is thinking about basically selling out and moving somewhere else, but they stayed because the MLS, basically everyone in the MLS wanted them to stay there, so they stayed, and they end up being the 3rd seed right now at 11-5-5, and then Orlando City at 10-3-8. On the western side is going to be Portland Timbers at 11 wins, 5 losses, and 5 draws. Sporting Kansas City 11-6-3. So, our team that we cheer for, well, at least the team I cheer for. Seattle Sounders FC 10-5-5, and Minnesota United 8-5-6. Yes, usually there's way more games, way more points, but again, kind of like a shortened season because of Corona. MLS was kind of started already. They're a couple weeks in before shutting down and everything. So usually they have more games to play, but they're just going to start the playoffs soon, and they're going to call it the 2020 Audi MLS Cup playoffs because they're going to be sponsored by Audi. It's the same thing as their normal playoffs, except the people that normally sponsor their playoffs aren't sponsoring it this year, and it's a whole thing. But the playoffs will begin on November 20th, and the conclude of the MLS Cup on December 12th. So December 12th we'll find who is the best soccer team in America. And the biggest reason they're trying to squish this all in is because the way soccer works around the world is players can come in and out no matter where they come from. So there's players in America that go overseas and play in Spain, but Spain also just started their brand new season like a couple weeks ago. So it's weird because soccer's on basically somewhere year round, but when we have players from our places go over there and they have players come over here, and so I don't know. The MLS is a little weird right now because not a lot of players are transferring because of coronavirus, so there's traveling restrictions and all this other stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how soccer in general kind of moves forward and how the MLS handles this. But right now they're getting ready to start playoffs, hoping that KC can bring back another title. Don't think it's going to happen. There's a lot of strong teams out there right now, but just kind of a heads up of what's going on in the MLS.
Yeah, and kind of to follow up, I mean, it's another sport where I think we just had so many sports going on at once the last month or so. So haven't been paying attention to Major League Soccer as much as I probably should. But now that Major League Baseball is over, NBA is over, might be able to dedicate a little bit more attention to it. I think just kind of looking back at the schedule, it looks like that comeback tournament was in July. I was going to say, if it was 2 months ago, that would be mind-blowing. It's been a long year, but I didn't think it'd been that long of a year. So it was in July, which makes me feel a little bit better, but still 2020 is dragged on. So could have been last month, and it would have felt like the same to me. But kind of just looking at the standings and everything for somebody who hasn't really been paying attention to it as much as I should. Eastern Conference, as far as goal differential, looks like they definitely have some stronger teams. Philadelphia Union has a plus 22 goal differential, which is pretty sizable if you've been paying attention to soccer and kind of know how that works. Usually games are 2-1, 3-1, something around there. So having a plus 22 goal differential is pretty good. And they have a couple other teams with 10 plus goal differential. Doesn't always mean that's the best team because you could have teams winning blowout games, but can be an indicator of a strong offense. Like you said, Sporting Kansas City is kind of our team that we both root for, and they're in solid position for the Western Conference right at number 2 right now. And just kind of always seems like they have a tough path with the two teams from West Coast there, Portland and Seattle, kind of traditionally strong Western Conference teams. You usually see one of them making the championship game about every year. Kind of the same 3 or 4 teams out of the West that seem like they rotate in that spot. So I think Kansas City has a tough road out of the Western Conference, but would like to see him come out, and definitely something I'll be paying attention to more as I go and try to get back into it. But honestly, basically just paying attention to Kansas City as of now.
And so the last thing we want to say is congratulations to Gordo for winning another Gold Glove. Definitely deserved, and kind of riding off into the sunset with retirement and everything. And I think what we'll end up doing before baseball comes back around, we'll have a whole podcast basically on the baseball as well. So got a lot of cool things coming forward to this channel, and we're going to keep with it. We're going to keep rolling with NCAA football and NFL. We also got MLS kind of doing the playoffs. Once that's over, we're going to start getting into NBA stuff coming back around. So, sports happen year-round. We're just going to keep rolling with them, and we'll just keep dealing with whatever happens in 2020, and we're getting ready to come up on 2021. So hopefully something a little different in 2021 will be a little bit more exciting and funner for sports.
Yep, hopefully get back to normal. And we thank everybody for listening. We appreciate you guys, and we'd love for you to subscribe if you haven't yet, wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, basically whatever channel or app you use to listen to your podcast, you can find us there. We also have a YouTube channel. You can find by searching Slacker Sports Show. We post the audio every week on that YouTube channel. And then you can also follow us on Twitter at Slacker Sports to keep up with the podcast.